Welcome. Welcome to Patrick Henry College. My name is Graham Walker, president of the college, and I'm thrilled to have you all joining us here for our Newsmaker interview series, hosted by Marvin Olasky. Dr. Marvin Olasky, as you may know, is editor-in-chief of World Magazine, but also is well-loved by Patrick Henry College students because he is our distinguished professor of journalism and public policy. A number of our students have had wonderful experiences learning from you, writing with you, and for you. We are also thrilled here at Patrick Henry College to have Susan Olasky as our writer-in-residence. So thank you both for being with us, and thank you all for joining us for this interview today. As you may know, for this interview series, we are joined by people here in the live audience, as well as by those on our live webcast, and ultimately by the over 400,000 readers of World Magazine who will end up reading the published version of what gets discussed today. Marvin Olasky is very good at these interviews. He's very good at analyzing public policy. As you may know, he's been at it for a long time, not only through World Magazine, but in other things too. He wrote the influential book Compassionate Conservatism, about which you may have heard some election cycles back. Also, The Tragedy of American Compassion, and other books and articles about many aspects of public life. He has a seasoned voice, and he's a really good interviewer. And today, he's going to be interviewing Craig James. So let me tell you a little bit about Mr. James. Craig James won a college scholarship to Southern Methodist University for his standout performance on the football field, and won All-American honors on the field during college. After graduation, he played for the New England Patriots, starting in both the Super Bowl 20 and the 1985 Pro Bowl. During the off-season, he worked as a licensed commercial land broker. James served for over 20 years as a college football analyst, spending time at CBS, ABC, and ESPN. You may have seen him in some of those venues. In 2009, he published a book, Game Day, a chronicle of his college spring training tours. In 2010, he joined the board of the Texas Public Policy Foundation and founded Texans for a Better America. Last year, he left his job at ABC ESPN to run for the U.S. Senate. During his 2012 Texas campaign for the Senate, he spoke in favor of natural marriage, stating that he believed homosexuality was a choice. His campaign was unsuccessful, and he was hired to be a sports broadcaster for Fox. James spent all of 1 week working for Fox Sports Southwest before Fox announced that he would not be back, citing the comments he had made during his political campaign and calling him, quote unquote, a polarizing figure in the college sports community, unquote. Well, let's just see how polarizing you really are. Welcome, Craig James.
Thank you.
So if you were composing an ad for a Fox Sports analyst, what would be the background of a person, ideally, for such a position?
Well, since I was there for one show in 1 hour, I'm not sure I'm qualified to tell you what the culture should be. I didn't stick around long enough for a Christmas bonus. I'm certain of that.
Okay.
You know, it's an unfortunate situation, but there's a reason for it. I believe the Lord is in control of this storm, and as we'll discuss here, it's a unique situation, but one that we can't just brush under the rug and let it go. We have to address it.
Yeah, it seems like from what Graham Walker was just describing, that you do have a background that seems useful for such a position. I mean, including, I don't think Graham mentioned that you were NFL Offensive Player of the Year in 1985, so you've operated in sports at a very high level, and as a sports analyst, right? I mean, ESPN, CBS Sports, local stations in Dallas. Yeah. So you fit the job requirements.
Well, I've never had a problem before in over 20 years of broadcasting. And playing in a locker room also, as you know, you're playing with white guys, brown guys, black guys, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different beliefs, and you have to come together. I'm very humble when I say that my teammates in high school, college, voted me a captain, which meant that they knew that I loved them, I cared about them. And as a believer, and what my Lord and Savior says to do is to love God and love thy neighbor. And so when you say qualified for this, I believe that the Lord has put me through different experiences in my life that have prepared me for what this is and for the arrows that'll come from it. And if that's the case, then so be it.
And in business and in politics, you've hired gay guys, and I didn't see in any records I saw of your expressing antipathy towards homosexuals as far as working in particular jobs and so forth, right?
Right, exactly. God's brilliance took you and I off the hook of being judges, right? He knew that we weren't qualified to judge. He also knew that as competitive people in this world, if we were judgmental, it would create conflict. And so as a Christian, I believe all of the book, not part of the book. I believe it all. I'd rather be biblically correct than politically correct. And so therefore, whenever it says, judge not lest ye be judged too, I absorbed all of that and I live by that. So when I hire someone, I hire them based on their qualifications as a human being. I'll leave it up to God to judge them for their choices.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your faith background.
I was born in East Texas, a little town, a little farming community. Learned how to pick tomatoes at a very young age. Okay. But I also saw the love for the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ through my grandparents and my parents. And so I was always a believer and accepted Jesus as a young kid. Went to a Billy Graham crusade in Pasadena, Texas, South Houston area, back in 6th grade, which was a phenomenal experience, great opportunity. And so I've always followed the Lord, and I've tried to live according to His desires for us. And it's been lately in my life that I've really come to understand more about what His meaning and purpose is for us and what my purpose is in life. And that is to get out and to share and to be a light amongst darkness. And to share with people that there is good news. And there is a consistent news, and that's Jesus. That is the one consistent thing in my life. And it always has been and always will.
So what exactly did you say, and when did you say it? What is the statement that made Fox think you were unemployable?
Well, during the campaign, during a debate.
Because you're running for Senate.
Running for Senate, and it's Ted Cruz, who is now our senator. Ted had the same position. They asked us basically, what's your definition of marriage? And I've said it's between a man and a woman. It's Adam and Eve. And I believe that is the definition. And I talked a little bit more about the moral fiber of our country and that we're on a slide and we're losing it, and that we need leadership and that we need people who will stand boldly for their beliefs and not hide from them. And so those statements are the ones that apparently the Fox sports department did not like and said would not work within their HR department.
Okay, and these, at least from what I've read, are you expressed yourself civilly. I mean, there were no slurs or bad language or anything like that.
No,
right?
I did not. No.
Okay, and you referred to homosexuality as a choice.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
I believe that we all are born with sinful tendencies, and we have to make a decision. We have to choose whether or not we're going to act on those tendencies. I choose not to act in adultery. I choose not to murder. It's when we act upon those sinful tendencies that it becomes sin. And I believe that we all have a choice to make on whatever that tendency is, and that God will judge us for those. He's going to judge me for my actions and for my choices in life, just as He will judge those who act on their sinful tendencies. And that's what I said during that answer of that debate.
And you're opposed to heterosexual adultery as well, I take it?
Yeah, I just believe that there's an Adam and an Eve, and that was in the book of Genesis. And
okay.
Again, I go back to all of the book, not part of it.
Okay, so then Fox Sports hires you. Did you go apply to them for a job? Did they contact you originally? How did this all get started?
That's the comical part of this. They called and heard that I had an interest in getting back into broadcasting.
Okay.
I had taken off basically a year after the campaign to decompress and to just catch my breath. And I also, my real estate business, I'm very involved with. And so they called and said, would you have an interest? And I said, certainly. Said, well, we got a show for you on Saturday night, a 1-hour program. We'd love to have you. And I said, that would be great. I'd love to do it. And this was in a few weeks before the regular season kicked off this year. So they sought me out on a Friday afternoon before we went on the air. They issued a very flattering, complimentary press release talking about my credentials, that I'd be an asset to their coverage. I went on the air the next night on that Saturday night, did my 1-hour show. On the Sunday evening, I received a phone call from the station's general manager saying, look, it's over. Fox is not going to let this carry on. So it was a short-lived deal.
So this is Sunday night. You're at Cape Cod at the time, right, in Massachusetts?
Right.
And this is a call from someone you've known, I take it, at
Yes.
Fox Sports. And what exactly did he say?
Well, when the phone rang, and you know, at lunch, I get this phone call, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's been 24 hours or less, and I'm already getting, you know, a promotion. Something's going on here good, right? And I answer the phone. It's a Sunday night, Labor Day weekend, and he says, your services are no longer going to be needed. We're not going to continue on with this, which floored me. I mean, I said, you've got to, this has to be a joke. It wasn't a joke, and I've never been fired from anything, and certainly not in broadcasting, and you know, so it was within hours that I found out that a Fox spokesperson had said to the Dallas Morning News that basically the comments and the position that I had as a Christian, my biblical belief in the definition of marriage was not going to fly at Fox, and so therefore I was not going to work at Fox.
And specifically in the HR, the Human Resources Department, how did you interpret that?
That I was being punished for having a biblical belief.
Okay.
That's how I interpreted it.
Okay. And did you tell them that? Did you ask them, I mean, why exactly are you doing this? And am I being punished for my biblical belief? Have you addressed that to them directly?
I have not spoken directly. You know, our attorneys at Liberty Institute, they're handling that part of it. But, you know, they continued to make the statements, and my agent was telling them, hey, look, would y'all stop saying this? You know, he has the right for what he has under the First Amendment. And I think that's the message. All of these things that we are talking about right now, there are a lot of different things that I've done in my life that people are going to try to pull from and talk about. You don't have to have liked me as a broadcaster. You may have thought I was good or bad or indifferent. As a businessman, maybe you didn't like me. Maybe you didn't like me as a Senate candidate. This isn't about Craig James. This is about religious liberty. It's about something that happened to an individual in America that's denying me the right, the biblical right that I have, and the First Amendment right I have to religious liberty in this country. That's what this is about.
Okay, and again, this wasn't anything you said on the air while working as a sports analyst. You didn't suddenly go into a tirade about gays or anything like that. This was something you voiced during a political campaign, a position that is certainly held, at least by the 2005 referendum, essentially, where Texans by 76% voted for a constitutional amendment, an amendment to the Texas Constitution, saying essentially the marriage is between a man and a woman.
Absolutely.
So essentially, if you are unemployable in a position for which you are well suited, then judging by the 2005 results, 76% of Texans would be unemployable.
Yeah.
3 out of 44 Texans should not be at work.
Even Governor Perry would have a hard time selling that.
Governor Perry would have a hard time.
Very tough economics.
So did the people at Fox ever say, as this started to go public, well, gee, let's not go into courts of law. Let's sit down and have a discussion about this. Did they in any way reach out and say, you know, let's talk about this and we'll see what we can do? Nothing like that.
At this point here, you know, it's been almost crickets. You know, very quiet.
Okay. And in all your years of being a broadcaster and being a sports analyst, have you brought your religious viewpoints into any analysis you've done, talking about particular players or you know, whether a particular football team would win? You haven't said that God is on the side of the Dallas Cowboys.
No. He obviously is not right now.
Right. So, okay. Now this is interesting because now I know the Patrick Henry College students would not have had time for this since you're all busy studying. But last night I was watching on TBS the baseball game between the Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds. And they're doing analysis before the game, after the game. There was Keith Olbermann on TBS. And Keith Olbermann, I can just give you a couple of statements that Keith Olbermann has made on the air. This was in 2008, 2009. For instance, he was talking about Michelle Malkin, who's a conservative columnist and author. And Keith Olbermann talks about, quote, the total mindless, morally bankrupt, knee-jerk, fascistic hatred without which Michelle Malkin would be just a big mashed up bag of meat with lipstick on it. Oh, or here, this is addressed to President Bush, time in 2008, "You're a fascist. Get them to print you a t-shirt with fascist on it. You, sir, have no place in a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Mr. Bush, shut the hell up. Good night and good luck." Now, Keith Olbermann was saying these on the air, but it doesn't seem to have kept TBS Sports from hiring him now as an analyst. And actually, when I was watching him last night as he was analyzing the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds, he did not say anything negative about President Bush or Michelle Malkin or anyone else. He was actually sticking to sports. So that seems fine. On your job as a sports analyst, you're sticking to sports.
I have stuck to sports.
There was a staff writer on The Atlantic, Connor Friedersdorf, who is, as is The Atlantic magazine generally, I mean, he's politically liberal, he's certainly pro-gay, and he was writing that if Craig James had said, quote, "Homosexuality is a sin, and I would never vote to give a gay athlete the Heisman Trophy or Player of the Game honors, because to do so would elevate a sinner," end quote, then that would be grounds to refrain from hiring him. This is Connor Friedersdorf writing. So you've not done this at all. So Friedersdorf says, and let me just read this a little bit because it's interesting. At least interesting to me and hope to you. 20 years ago, when gay equality was an outlying position and prejudice against gays was the norm, I would have regarded it as imprudent and unjust to fire a college football analyst because he favored gay marriage or declared homosexuality not sinful. Today, I'm every bit as convinced that it's imprudent and unjust to fire someone for calling gay marriage unwise and homosexuality sinful. These are not remarks that he made on the air while doing his job. A network would be justified in firing a sports broadcaster for expressing controversial moral or political views during an entertainment telecast that had nothing to do with the subject. But to not hire someone for prior remarks made amid civic debate and that are indistinguishable from the position taken by almost half of all Americans, this is unjust. So are you getting support? Well, tell us about the reaction of people outside Fox, people in your church, people in the broadcast industry. What kind of reaction are you getting as this lawsuit is commencing?
Well, I think what's happening here is people, and we hope to wake up a lot more people to this understanding of what's really going on, is that it's almost a double standard. And that someone like Olbermann can have a position, can even say it on the air, and he's okay. But they don't want to tolerate and believe that we or I have a biblical right to the beliefs that I do, a right to those biblical beliefs, right? And so that to me is where we've got to wake up and be heard. And I really hope that the message that comes from this to people, like-minded people who have a faith, whatever that faith is, I'm a Christian, whatever your faith is, and you enjoy that religious liberty, that you'll be bold and you'll be passionate and support that liberty, or we're going to lose it, because the other side is being heard. That's why it's okay for those folks to say that. What we can't have in this country is to where you get to a point to where a corporation or a small business owner feels empowered to punish or hold it against those who have a biblical belief. And that to me is the chilling impact and the chilling effect of this moment that's going on in my life.
Right, so you could think of, in a sense, circles of tension. I mean, one would be if a person who has a strong religious belief voices that at an inappropriate time, that is in the middle of a football game doing football analyst, and suddenly off you go on this. Okay, that's one circle, and I can see a person then being fired or something along those lines. The second circle is, and this is Keith Olbermann in a sense. I mean, these very strong political statements he made were not made while he was operating as a sports analyst. He was doing political stuff on MSNBC. Nevertheless, he's doing it on the air, and so that could be a subject of some tension. If you assault a person with a different view in a very personal way, as he did Michelle Malkin, then maybe yes, maybe no, but that's a harder call, maybe. The third circle is the circle of statements made in a completely unrelated environment, off the air, while engaged, let's say, in a political campaign or something like that. And that, yeah, I don't think most Americans would say that a person should be fired for that. But then there's even a fourth circle. These are statements made not contemporaneously, but a year and a half ago, and those then come back to haunt you, and thus you are not allowed to carry on in your profession. You're declared unemployable. Your reputation, at least in some circles, is ruined, because people, I suspect, think this, well, Fox, unless they're aware of the situation, people would think, well, there must be something else he would have done, because he's not going to be fired for that during a senatorial campaign.
Right.
So it really makes you unemployable.
Yeah, thank you very much
well, yeah.
for the reminder. My wife reminded me of that too. You know, and I guess here's what it has done for sure. There's no question about it now that if someone hired me in broadcasting, there's going to be the other side that's going to bring down a lot of problems and focus on that and not let me do my job. And so an ESPN or a CBS or these out there, you know, while they like me perhaps as an analyst in my work on the air, it's just not worth it. And I didn't ask Fox to do this to me. You know, that's the disturbing part of it. But again, I go back to my faith, and the reason I have peace on this thing and I'm able to laugh a little bit at it is because I have a faith, and I know God's in control of my storms in my life, and I know that I have been prepared for this, and Liberty Institute's done a phenomenal job representing me, and we can keep up and stay involved with that if you're interested. LibertyInstitute.org, stay involved with it, but I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm not going to allow Fox Sports to distract and distort what happened. It's a simple matter. And I'm going to keep the truth on the table, and so that people can see that and hopefully get energized enough to act upon it. There's a gentleman that sent me an email a few weeks ago. Says he's a gay activist out of California. He has 15 million followers. And he said, it's dead wrong what happened to you. Just much like the note that you just read from the gentleman. And he said, look, we've got to stop bullying. The gay community has to stop bullying people who have a different opinion, you know, because we got to respect their ability to hold that dear to their hearts. We want that same tolerance coming our way. So there is some support that is coming from not just the Christian community and my like-minded believers, but from a lot of other people who see this for what it is.
And if folks who are, say, watching this live streamed or listening to the podcast later on, if they want to register directly with Fox Sports, their concerns about this, is there a way for them to do that? I
believe that the gentleman's name that Liberty has had out there is Dan Bell. It's dan.bell@fox.com. And so you can, and what we've tried to say is, look, reinstate me. Put me back on the air. Very unlikely that that's going to happen. That would be an interesting show in and of itself. But we're trying to pressure them to admit they made a mistake. And it's not right what they've done to anyone. And it happens to be me. So that's dan.bell@fox.com.
Yeah, Connors Friedersdorf in the Atlantic ends his column by saying, I'm a bit perplexed by the people who are celebrating his firing, Craig James's firing. There are millions of Americans who think homosexuality is a sin. Is the implication that if any of them dare express that view out loud, they ought to be unemployable? If not, why should James be denied this job? What profession is farther removed from the controversy than college football analysis, which entails watching, dissecting, and describing on-field plays? Mm-hmm. There might be other professions that are equally removed. There are a lot, but still, the difficulty here, for folks who do not aspire to be football analysts, is that anything then you say at any point in your life can and will be used against you to try to declare you unemployable.
So, okay, what does this mean to me? And I've thought, obviously, I've had now a few weeks to really ponder where we are in this country and what's happened to me. I really hope that 100 years from now, that Americans look back at this part of American history and say, there was a fork in the road, and those who enjoyed and appreciated religious liberty in the First Amendment went to battle, and they fought for it. Our founding fathers 250 years ago fought for the First Amendment. They were persecuted. They went through a lot of different things back then too, but they stood up for it. And now we're at a point in this country where we have to do the same. I really believe that. We are out, there is this internet and all of the things that were going on and the tolerance this and not tolerate that. I think we are at a challenging point in the country. And so I'm hopeful that this is going to be another wake-up call and a calling to people to be heard and to fight and to stand strong, and that this will be a great moment for our country.
Yeah. I mean, previously, situations like this arose, let's say, when someone had been nominated for the Supreme Court, and there was an attempt to, I mean, people went back and looked at everything the nominee had written and so forth. That's the Supreme Court, slightly different from being, not that I want to say the position of a football analyst isn't up with a Supreme Court justice, but still a little bit different.
I would agree with you.
So we're getting to a strange point in America. There's in Texas jurisprudence, there's a thing that can be filed legally called Rule 202, a motion for pre-litigation discovery, allowing a judge to take expedited action and order depositions within weeks. So Jeff Mattier here from Liberty, you've filed the 202, and so you hope to hear, as I understand, by November 5th is when the judge has to respond. So this could come pretty quickly, or it could go on and drag on in the courts.
Yeah. And so here's what we're hopeful is that between now and November the 5th, that they will come to a reality that they have made a mistake and own up to it. But at the end of the day, we're not going to sweep this under the rug and move on, because it is a slippery slope that we're on with this situation. It's a concern. And what I said the other day is if we allow it to slide and we cover it up, the slide all of a sudden turns into policy. And it's a new policy and a new definition of the First Amendment and religious liberty. Yeah. And that's what we can't allow to happen.
Yeah, I am not a person who fears that the dark night of fascism is descending in America. And, you know, we are not at that point. And, you know, I hope we won't get to that point. But it's starting to look a little bit dangerous in this way. There's a wonderful series of novels by an author, Philip Kerr, set in Germany, largely in the 1930s. His main character is a policeman who really hates the Nazis and risks his life in many times, including by sometimes making wry comments about Hitler. And he makes a comment, this is in one of the novels set in 1934 Berlin. Hitler came to power early in 1933. He makes a comment in 1934, and the person to whom he's speaking smiles a little bit and says, "What you said just now, you reminded me of something. I was remembering what it was like to speak without looking over your shoulder." And, you know, I hope that in America in some time down the road, we don't have to say something like this, you know, because there was a time not very long ago, and I hope it's still around, that we can speak without looking over our shoulder. But if the Craig James firing stands, then that's going to be an awful precedent for other organizations to do the same. That will take away the freedom of speech and freedom of religion from all of us.
Yeah, I've had a number of people who are following this begin to come up to me on the streets, and they're starting to talk about how they're quiet in their workplace, and they're a little bit concerned that maybe if their boss finds out their position, their stand, that they could hold it against them. That's the chilling effect if this does stand, if it's not challenged, and if it's not made right, that people would be looking over their shoulders, and that's not America.
Right. Yep. I suspect you all have some questions. There are mics on that side and that side, so raise your hand. Students first.
First of all, just thank you, Mr. Daines, for being here. My name's Gabrielle, and I was just wondering, in 29 states of the country, including Texas, it's legal to fire someone for being gay or because the employer simply suspects that they're gay. Do you think that that's acceptable, and do you think that their experiences are comparable to what you've experienced?
Well, I don't know the law on that in the state of Texas about what an employer can or cannot do, but I do understand the freedoms that we have in America. And in America, we do have the freedom to make decisions. And that's the thing that we have to maintain. It's liberty. And again, this goes back to the part, Gabrielle, where it takes us off the hook of not being judgmental. That's in God's hands. But in this country here, we were founded on the beliefs that you could be free to make a decision, personal decision. And so I hope that people are able to continue to move down that path without being punished for it.
I mean, let me just think about this a little bit. That seems to me that if there is a gay rights organization that is hiring someone and they decide they don't want to hire a person who is opposed to homosexuality, they should be free to do that. They should be free not to hire such a person. And it seems to me also, if let's say there's a church, for example, that's a member of a denomination that goes to the Bible and sees homosexuality as sinful, that church should not have to hire a person who espouses that and believes in that and lives in that lifestyle. In the same way that a church that believes heterosexual adultery to be sinful, a church should not have to hire an adulterer, and if a church finds out that one of its staff members is committing adultery, that church should be free to fire that person. So it cuts both ways in terms of freedom of expression and freedom of organizations to hire someone who believes what the organization believes and doesn't live a life that conflicts with those beliefs. Anyway, just some thoughts on this. Next, other questions, comments. But thank you for that.
Yeah. But again, I think it goes back to the freedom part and to the continuing fight for the things and the principles that have made our country great. And I know I'm 52 years old and have 4 kids that my wife and I have raised. And I have a moral compass, and the moral compass that I have comes from God. He provides me the right and wrong. And I have a concern that the moral compass in our country is fading. And that creates issues and problems. If you don't believe in God, there is no moral compass. And there is no right or a wrong. It's just whatever feels good to you. And so I try to live by what the Lord asks me to do, and not when it feels right or feels good or is appropriate for a certain situation. But I do hope that you all will take the time to support your friends and your neighbors and to spread the word with the other people. This isn't an attack on another side, the other side, for their beliefs. This is a moment where we can come together and support our beliefs. And Gabrielle, it's that freedom that America provides.
Other questions? Or comments? I mean, go ahead.
Yes, it seems like in the news and stuff that this persecution against people who oppose gay marriage is becoming sort of an epidemic. Have you seen that? Have people in similar situations to yours reached out to you and shared their stories?
There is a double standard that's taken place now. If you have a position and a belief on the definition of marriage, you're absolutely sticking your neck out there, and the other side's going to come get you. And obviously, it caught me from a corporation that we were not expecting it. I mean, this is Fox. This is the one network that I personally used to have a little confidence in, that they were conservative and they were trying to share similar beliefs that I had, and I enjoyed watching them. So there's a little bit of an irony there that this has taken place within the Fox family. So, the persecution part of it, as Christians, we are told that we will be persecuted for our stand, but to stand boldly and strongly and to not take a backseat to anything. So I have no concerns about any worldly judgment that comes my way. And I said this on my Senate campaign time and again. I had really no interest in being a U.S. senator for the perks that comes with it. I did it because I ran because I felt I was called by the Lord to do that. Don't know where the end result will come from it, but I did it. My goal in life is that when I meet my Maker, He says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And in that situation, and the one that I'm in right now, and the way I'm responding right now, I believe I'll get a thumbs up.
Other questions? I mean, is there any? Go ahead. Mike over here.
I was actually listening to Mike and Mike on the way in this morning on ESPN Radio, and they were talking about something different, but they made the quip, someone said that I read the sports page every morning because it's the only page where I can get away from, oh no, actually, how do you say it? I read the sports page because it's the only page that celebrates the successes of people in America as opposed to their failures. And I think that, but their context is, sports tends to be a little bit less politicized, a little bit less polemic and argumentative. I guess, obviously this probably came as a surprise, but for someone on the inside, is the sports media indeed generally less politicized in your experience than news media at large?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, you've got to keep your ideas of the country out of the analysis or the coverage of sports. And that's what we talked about earlier. I didn't say this on the air talking about sports. Certainly wasn't on us, not on the air with Fox. And so I think that's why it's kind of been like a safe haven for a lot of people, a neutral site. Now, we can go bicker over whether you like, Texas or Notre Dame or USC or Michigan. We can talk about that. But certainly have generally stayed away from the talk about your beliefs politically, religiously.
Yeah, let's see. Susan, did you have a question? Here's the microphone.
You have a lot of people here starting out careers, maybe tempted to keep their mouths shut, keep their heads down, not be that tall stalk of wheat. So what advice would you give them?
As an old football player, I like playbooks, and the Bible provides me a playbook. The Ten Commandments, it has a lot of things on what we're supposed to do. So I would say the answer to your question is look to the Bible, and nowhere in the Bible does it say to keep your head down and to be quiet, does it? I don't go preach. I have not preached to people when I've been on the air, but people know that I have a love for my Lord and Savior. I don't hide that. And I try to be. There was an old country billboard I saw one day, and it said, "You might be the only Bible a person ever sees." So I had a teammate come up to me one time in New England, training camp. He goes, "Man," he goes, "Man, you're always smiling." He goes, "You got to be a believer." I said, "Yeah, I am." So I would say this: someone starting their career, don't be afraid if someone asks you to tell them, "Hey, here's what I believe." And they're going to see, more importantly, not your words, but your actions. That's what they're going to see and take notice of. So don't be afraid at all for your love for the Lord. I know this. God shows up for me every day, so why wouldn't I show up for Him?
One difference historically between America and Russia is that we had a saying here, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. In Russia, the saying was, tallest stalk gets the sickle. So.
Yeah, I worked for Fox Broadcasting myself over the summer, and I was working with a lot of their shows, and a lot of their shows, Glee, lots of their shows, like almost every show has some kind of homosexual belief supported in it. And I don't believe in that. It's like, where would you say is the line you draw? I'm not directly part of it. Where are you you love the person, hate this? I don't know, what would you do in that situation where you're working for somebody and promoting things that you don't believe in, but it pays the bills? But it's one of those weird, where would you find the balance in that?
Well, I have not gone and promoted things that I don't believe in. And again, it goes back to the freedom and the choice. We all have a choice, and we make the decision whether or not we watch a particular program. And that's why I goes back to the simple part of what the Bible says. Judge not, lest ye be judged too. And God will be the one who judges me for my choices. And that's why I'm trying to get ready for that. And so everyone in this room will have the same, based on my belief, will all be judged by God. So that's in a different category, and let him do that.
Other questions or comments? Well, if we are all questioned out, then any final statement you want to make for the record? You've already said it well.
Glad to be here. I'm very impressed with the school and your campus and why you're here and what your goals are. And you got a life in front of you, and it's going to be a fun one. Don't be afraid to have a faith and to be bold and be strong and to go out, and honesty and integrity matter. You know, we're in a challenging time right now, and I'm reminded of the question, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And most people, though, are afraid to take that first bite. Fear of failure is why most people fail. And so take the bite. I'm taking a bite right now, and see if we can get to it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let me remind you that you can come back for the next several episodes of our Newsmaker interview series. Tomorrow at 12:20, Marvin Olasky will be interviewing Ryan and Bethany Baumberger, who have been exposing the evidence that the abortion industry targets African American babies. Then tomorrow afternoon, 4 o'clock, again here, same location, Marvin Olasky will be interviewing E.W. Jackson, who is the candidate for one of the two candidates for lieutenant governor here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Election coming up next month. And then on Friday, you come back at 12:40. Mark Leibovich, chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine, will be interviewed again by Dr. Olasky. So